Hello and welcome to the Paper Boys podcast. I'm JJ Smith.
And I'm Zach Nally.
We're reporters with the Carteret County News-Times. We're joined this week by a newly minted member of the West Carteret Athletic Hall of Fame, Mr. John Crossley. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thank you. Good to be here.
So dig me, I'm old. Zach can tell you how old I am today, but he's not allowed. So I've been at the paper 18 years now. And John Crossley is probably my top 10 all-time stories of covering.
Like in terms of your own perspective?
My own top 10.
Yeah,
my own personal top 10 of how...
Well, we don't get a ton of players of the year in the nation.
In the state, yeah.
In state, that's
or
right.
national champions, yeah.
That's right, that's right.
So but the thing that was so great about it was, and not to dismiss anything he had done before the final month of his senior year, but the final month of his senior year, could anything in your 3.9 years of high school have prepared you for your final month of your senior year?
No, it took off, that's for sure. I mean, I kind of always thought it could happen, meaning like going from kind of mediocre or average to being really successful kind of happened really quickly, but I'm just lucky it paid off, honestly, is kind of how I look at it.
Well, I think you're being hard on yourself. Mediocre is far from it, but...
Well, break it down for us. Tell us what that final month
John
included.
had one state title going into your senior year, is that right? Because you got one winner.
Yeah,
well, let's break it down even to the final month. He had 2 state titles, which, hey, in high school, you win a state title, that's phenomenal.
It's huge.
You're one of the best in the state.
Especially at the individual level like
yeah,
that.
Oh, my God,
yeah.
right? Well, John's problem was that, unfortunately for him, he went to high school, and not only the same high school, but was on the same team as one Blake Dodge, who was winning state titles like it was her job. So his 2 compared to whatever she finished with, 18, you were like, oh, look at John with his nice little 2 state titles.
State titles,
yeah,
again.
State titles. And then his final month, he breaks the county mile record set by Sonny Hyman.
Oh, yeah, Sonny Hyman.
Oh, that's been a long time then.
Yeah, man. That had been a while. What was that? I think Sonny had said that in, let's see if I can capture it real quick. There's so much to wrap up with John. And our producer Ross will.
It was a 46-year.
Was it 46 years?
County high school mile record.
46 years.
And it previously was no, that's the middle school. Yeah, so his was yours 4:14. You ran the mile in 4:14, John?
Yeah, I think so. Sonny came from a different generation though, on a cinder track.
Oh, wow.
So we have the nice rubberized tracks and the spikes and all the technology. And
John Crossley, always so humble. Always
going to find a way to...
That's worth noting. But,
yeah.
But yes, I did meet Sonny after doing that as well, and that was a cool experience.
So here's a talk sports show talk debate deal. John set the record in a South Carolina meet.
Oh, yeah, Taco Bell.
So does he have the county record?
Being that it wasn't here. Right.
I mean, he's a county athlete. He
That's
has
right.
the county
That's right.
record, but he set it in an entirely different state. So anyway, yeah, set it in South Carolina. 4:14. Like you said, Sonny was 4:32 in 1967. So John breaks a record in, 2013 that had been around since 67.
Yeah.
If that's the only thing he had done in the final month of his high school
You can
career.
certainly take that one to the bank.
That would have been something, right? And so then he's got 2 state championships, which again, phenomenal, and he doubles that.
Okay.
At the spring meet,
Just in the last month there.
Just
Sure,
boom, I got from 2 to 4, just like that, and 800 and 1600. That's a pretty cool combo.
Yeah.
Half mile. Yeah.
Which actually happened at that same. So that's part of the rise, right? Was just the belief around being able to run fast like that. That's something worth noting because at that meet was the first time I had run a fast mile that was nationally recognized, and it was significant. But I mean, 15 or 20 minutes after that, I had to run a fast 800.
Oh wow!
So I had no recovery, and that was the first time I ran 150 in the 800. And so knowing I could run a fast mile and run better than I ever have, and then come back 20 minutes later and run 150 and win against a really good field, I kind of knew, okay, I'm better than 150. I can compete on a national level, and so it kind of snowballed from there. So that's kind of what helped aid that, I think, was just confidence and not knowing I could run that fast because I never knew anybody run that fast before. So,
right.
Yeah.
And you had been a little bit snake bit in your career too, right? At state meets.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah,
well, winter and spring.
Yeah, the first time I had a chance at winning a state title was in the 1000. It was at JDL Fast Track in Winston-Salem. I don't know how I remember this now. You're bringing it out.
I was going to say, you're firing this off here.
All these memories coming flooding back.
I had a chance, and with a lap to go, and on the indoor track, you're on a 200-meter track. So normally on outdoors, everybody starts their final move on the second, like the last curve. Like if you're on the starting line, you look diagonally across the track. At the 200 mark, that's where everybody kind of sprints to the finish for the most part at the high school level. Well, indoors is more complicated than that because the whole track is only 200. So when you hit a lap to go, everybody's pretty much all out. And I was making a move for the lead. I stepped on the rail and I fell. And so I didn't end up getting the state title when I think I could have won that race.
Holy cow.
Would have kicked it all off. So I was
Right.
kind of snake bit, to your point.
Yeah.
A little bit bitter and ready to get after it after that. And
Uh-huh.
I won my first state title outdoors that same season a few
Okay.
months later.
Okay.
Mhm.
Did you, because maybe you had not had the career you thought you were going to have up to that point, did you, your whole senior year, that summer, did you kind of have the fire in the belly, like this senior year, I'm going to tear it up?
Yeah, and you know what else too? Like I didn't come from much, and going to college wasn't standard in my family by any means. I'm a first generation student. And I mean,
Wow.
for the longest time, I didn't know how I was going to go to college. You know, I had no clue how that was going to be a reality for me, and it was going to be military for the longest time because that was the one option or route that I kind of saw. And I had a lot of interest in that. I was in the Army or the Naval ROTC program at the high school
right.
for 3 or 4 years, so I had a pathway kind of carved out there. Parents weren't huge fans of it, you know, being in the military and whatnot, which I understand now.
Sure.
And so it was kind of like, okay, I want to make something of myself and find a way to pay for school. I need to run a lot faster. And so I was really motivated from that point on. Once I kind of opened that door to realizing I could run fast enough to run at that level, then the fire kind of was like, okay, well, this is your shot, and if you don't take it, you may not ever get another chance, kind of thing. So it's kind of desperation.
School's expensive. I got to pay for it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it worked out that way by grace of God. But
Yeah.
you know, I'm happy it did, and yeah, that's kind of how it all started.
Are you born and raised in Newport?
I am. Well, I was born up here at Carteret General.
Yeah.
Where'd you live in Newport?
Right off.
This is old home week now time for Zach.
Yeah,
He loves to talk Newport.
Yeah.
Newport kid here.
Like
So
old proper Newport. So like Chatham Street.
Sure.
Like I was off of Newport Circle, which is like, do you know where Bojangles is?
Sure.
Right across the street from there, behind those woods.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So like South Lakeview and all that in there. Yeah.
That's
Sure.
like
sure.
a street over from where I was.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. How
What
about
about
that?
you? Where were you?
Well, I've lived in a few places in Newport actually, but mostly grew up in White Sands. So
Oh, nice.
we
Yeah.
ride our bikes all through there, get on a little league field,
Yeah.
and
You guys used to have 2 little ponds in the front.
We sure
used
did.
to catch bass in there.
Yeah.
Now they're all dried out, as far as I know. But,
yeah. But the main one next to it still has all the geese in there. And,
Oh, really?
And, yeah, that's still there.
Yep, I do remember that.
Newport hasn't changed a whole lot, John.
Yeah, that's cool though.
And so the 800, you were what, 154? At 1600, you were 421. Were those numbers you were like, okay, I can do something here?
Yeah, first. That was an interesting thing too. So the first time I won the state title in the 800, I ran 154.
Okay.
I had to run the mile in that meet, but I was pretty tired, and I was talking to my coach Marshall Windsor at the time.
Is this the spring of junior year?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I had to run the mile at the time. I was pretty tired. I'd won a state title. It wasn't that I didn't want to run, but my coach was just like, "Look, you probably don't need your best to win this." And so I actually went out, and it was a very slow race. Everybody let me take the lead, and we kind of walked 3 laps. Honestly, we were jogging for 3 laps, and then
Oh,
we
wow.
sprinted. It was the easiest state title. It was funny because it was so hard to win a state title up until that point. And once I had done it, I noted in my mind, like, wow, that wasn't that big of a deal after all.
Oh,
You
wow.
know? But
It was like a mental barrier you had to break
very,
through.
very much so.
Yeah.
It's very much like a realization that could be done. Like
Right.
I could be the one to do it. And now if I had 2 or 3 more years, I could have kept doing it. But,
Yeah. You might have been Blake Dodge, right? You might have been in the teens before it was all said and done.
Maybe.
That's right.
Sure. So he does that. So he's got the mile, and I'm looking at the mile stuff, see if we missed anything. John said that he's giving Sonny some credit there that he's did it back in the old tracks, and Sonny was like in Carteret County running.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
He's the
He's the guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Everybody attains to reach that level, right?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Of course, it wasn't the first record he had broken at that point, right? He'd also
Right.
broken the record at Newport Middle School.
Yeah, he did.
No, I'm saying to you. I think
Yeah.
5:02 was your 1 mile at Newport Middle.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I do remember that in 7th grade. I want to say.
Yeah.
7th,
Sure,
8th
sure.
grade. Yeah.
Middle school, and then overall county.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is interesting too. My first track coach, Allison Graham, is Rodney Kemp's, who got
Yeah,
connected with me,
yeah.
his daughter.
Sure.
So that was kind of surreal last night when we were all
Carteret County game.
Yeah.
It's a small town, small county here.
Yeah.
We
So at the time we said that other runners had bested Sonny's time, but those come in the 1600, which is 9.3 meters shorter than the 1 mile.
Which is the only reason why it happened in South Carolina.
Oh,
because-
because you weren't running the 1600.
There's another backstory there. I feel like I'll take this over. But, so Alan Webb is a noted track and field figure. He's kind of famous in the running community, not here, but like nationally. He set the American record in the mile when he was in high school in Michigan, and so he was at an invitation they named the Taco Bell Invitation in his honor. So it's like the kind of his event, and so. I don't remember where I was going with that, but he ran the full mile. So like that event from the beginning, how he designed it was to be the full mile, not the metric mile, not 1,600 meters.
Oh, okay.
So we ran the full 1,609 meters because he designed that event. But if out here, we would have never run that because they stopped doing that after Sonny had done.
Right.
They moved over to the 1,600.
Okay, so that leads to the longevity of Sonny's record. That
Right.
not a lot of people are running a pure mile.
Right, which nobody will ever again because they don't run those.
Well, we might be the year 3000. John Crossley might be able to know.
The name is still there. That's right.
Nobody will run a mile.
They're like, man, that John Crossley was fast.
Yeah. So yeah, likely unless they run an event where they
Sure.
run a mile, it won't be broken because they won't run a mile.
Wow.
Which is kind of weird, but I hope they run a mile because I'd like to see it broken in my lifetime. But yeah, that's why.
Well, I always enjoy the short distances, or the short, not quite short, but the medium distances, because the long distances are so much about stamina and holding a pace, and obviously the sprinting is a totally different animal. But that half mile, that 1 mile is really kind of a great combination of speed and the ability to not maybe come out too quickly at the beginning. I know Marshall Windsor said that with someone like you like to run so much that you'd have to keep an eye on you because you'd run yourself down to the ground. And so, I mean, people like that, yourself, that level of running I guess comes natural.
Yeah, I mean, the way I looked at it back then is I wasn't going to fail from lack of like training and effort.
Sure.
If I got injured, I knew that could happen. I dealt with that a few times in my career, but I wasn't prepared to let it just slip away because once I started running fast, I knew I had an opportunity. But I didn't really have any role models. Nobody had went before me and done that. I didn't have anybody to really look up to, so I was just kind of winging it, honestly.
Great segue from John Crossley, because talking about doing things for the first time, we were talking to Chris Lidner, who made the Hall of Fame with your class, and we were talking about, West Carter baseball really didn't do anything until like 2006.
Sure.
The school started in like 64. And my gosh, you're talking about 40 years and had never won a conference championship in baseball. They had never won a playoff game. Like that. Now that seems bizarre
it seems
to us.
ridiculous. Yeah.
And now with the running success of John Crossley, of Blake Dodge, of other Emmy Fisher and Whitaker and all
just West in general,
all the Croatan crowd, it just
sure.
seems like nothing. But when John Crossley won an Eastern Regional title in cross country.
First one.
Had never been done.
Never been done before.
A regional title.
Unbelievable.
In Carteret County?
It's crazy to think that at that point.
Wow. So when Josh says nobody before me was doing it.
You really did not have that.
No.
Yeah. And cross country is a whole different, that was a miracle because I started my first year at West as a true freshman, just coming in. I played soccer, actually. I had no aspiration to run at all. But when we would get in trouble on the soccer field, we would have to run. And I wasn't great at soccer. Like I was nowhere near the best player on the team, but I would beat everybody on the run. And I noticed, well, hey, I kind of like this. And then I just saw Shelton Mayo one day standing outside the ticket booth. He's like, hey man, you should be done with that. You should come run for us.
You should be done with that.
Shelton Mayo stealing soccer players.
And so later that year, I ran track for the first time, like outdoor track.
Yeah.
We didn't have indoor back then. We weren't competing indoor.
Oh wow. That's how old you are, John.
Yeah. Weird, but yeah, so that's kind of how that happened.
Yeah.
I ran track, and then there was some athletes here that were decent. There was Brendan Johan and Joseph Bond.
That's right.
Those guys were kind of the guys at the time, and I looked up to them a lot. And when they graduated, I realized I kind of had to take the helm, and I ran with it. But yeah, cross country was a whole different animal. I used it really to get in shape for outdoor track.
You're a short distance guy, right?
Kind of.
That's how you view yourself.
Yeah, but I wasn't fast at the beginning though. I couldn't sprint with the sprinters to do that. But when the more in shape I got and the more I ran, the faster I got. It was kind of strange.
Wow.
I don't know. Normally there's slow twitch muscle people and fast twitch, and the sprinters are more on that fast side where they can't run for a long time, but they're really good from A to B. And
right.
I found out through running I have both, and so I was blessed with that, but I didn't discover it early on. But yeah, cross country almost didn't happen. I had no aspirations at doing that at all.
Well, even the following year, you became the first West Boys runner to win a state championship runner-up, like to finish second in the state.
Yeah.
Set a school record, 15:54. You mentioned earlier, Ryan Toller had the previous record in '99, 15:55. So even though it wasn't your main focus, obviously you were blessed with the ability to excel at that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that race was unfortunate too because I think I could have won that race. I have a habit of running from behind and then running strong at the finish and winning a race.
Your kid's
Chasing
gonna get
those
the win for
sneakers,
you.
yeah.
And it would have worked in that race too, but I raced against a guy named Tanis Baldwin, who ended up running at North Carolina State, I think, and he had a pretty good career. But he was the opposite, and he went out really hard and got away from everybody. And so I actually didn't know I was in second place. I thought I was winning the race.
He was so far ahead.
Right. He was like maybe 25 seconds ahead of me.
Oh, wow.
At Kernersville at the time, you can't see that far ahead. You know, you might be able to see 5 seconds because you're in the woods for most of it. But yeah, I didn't even know he was up there. I had no idea I was in second.
Holy cow!
You thought you were cruising to the win.
Right, but if I would have been in contact, if I would have run a better race, I think I could have contended for the win.
How about that?
Yeah.
God, we need some Bluetooth chips in the ear or something like NASCAR. You got a guy ahead. You got to go out there.
Big screens up.
Yeah, where you see the standings or something.
Yeah.
You know.
How about that?
That is fascinating.
So crazy, but I mean, I was happy with it.
Sure.
That's the other thing too. I was always humble and grateful for all of it because I didn't expect any of it.
Right, you're like, this is all coming out of nowhere.
Yeah, I didn't know what to think of it at the time. You know, I'm just like, oh, well, that kind of sucks. I didn't win, but hey, I got second.
Well, and like Zach said, that's a rare thing that he was the first county runner, boys runner to ever do state runner up. Again, to tell you how rare that is, that was 12, right? Your senior year was 12.
13.
But the fall was 12, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, right.
So that was 12. So that's 12 years ago. It finally just happened again.
Did it? Who was that?
Croatoan's Tyrese Cone was a runner-up. So it's happened twice in Carteret County history.
Goodness.
Just 2 times. And it took 12, from this was 23, he did that. So, yeah, it took, 11 years?
Yeah.
I'm trying to do my...
That's why you're a sports reporter.
That's why I'm a sports reporter. So, yeah,
That's
man.
unbelievable, though, especially not being the sport that was your main focus. I mean, obviously it's running, but it's different.
Yeah, it's a lot different. It's the culture is even different. You know, it's you get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, you get to the starting line at 7 a.m. and there's 150 runners on one line running the same event at the same time in the same conditions. It's more combat than a track and field event is. And you're in the woods and the slosh, and people are falling, and there's a lot that goes on in the woods when people can't see you.
Sure.
It's a whole different sport, even though you're just running. I've always loved it. I sucked at it in college when you step up to 8K. That was kind of my cap. I couldn't run an 8K worth of lick, but I do love cross country. I love watching it.
Well, it seems like from 3.1 cross country, it seemed like you'd have been a 3,200 guy in track and field, huh?
Right.
Yeah, and I only ran 1 ever, and one fast one ever, and I almost set the record in that, which Waters had. And I didn't know about that until afterward. I was trying to break 10 in the 3,200 for the first time, which is like a significant barrier that high school kids kind of hit. When you get into the 9s, you're good. When you break into the 8s, you're elite. But it was never my event, so I didn't get that far. But I wanted to run 2 miles, 4:30 and 4:30. It was kind of the plan, or just under 5 and 5 to break 10. And I ended up running like 9:42 or something, and I think Waters was at like 9:20 something. So
how about that?
Yeah, that could have been possible, but I'd never, again, I didn't know how to run a 2 mile. I remember when I was preparing for that, I was thinking, you want me to run 4:30 and then do the same thing with
again?
nowhere else. And Coach Windsor at the time, bless him, he's like, yeah, you got it. It's no problem. You can absolutely do that. Just stick your nose in and run. And that was honestly a big theme throughout my whole career, is just belief. And I got that from the coaching staff, which I just didn't believe that I could do those things. I kind of worshipped the people who could, and then didn't think I could be one of those people. So.
Well, and one of my favorite things that I read about you too was the pre-race jitters.
Oh yeah.
That was a thing for you. Marshall said you would go over behind a tree somewhere, take care of business, and then you'd be good to go.
Yeah, and that wasn't just races. That was heavy practices. Like anytime, it wasn't fear of performance. It wasn't like performance anxiety. It was more so that, I mean, honestly, this might sound crazy, but like I knew I was about to put my body through extreme pain.
Oh,
and like I knew I was going to be comfortable with whatever happened. Like it was kind of like that, like fight or flight. And so if you think about when you're in a scary situation, you start getting the shakes and stuff.
Sure.
Like I would get so much adrenaline, I would end up getting sick before I ran.
How about that?
But I would feel bulletproof when I got to the line, so it worked out in that way. Once the adrenaline kind of edged off and you're ready to go. But yeah, I would get myself really amped up, and I mean, honestly, I think that's what it takes. But not everybody has the same kind of physical representation of that.
Well, I think that's probably one thing me and Zach, not being runners, probably don't appreciate, is that you have to have physical, the talent, the gifts, the DNA, whatever, and then you have to have the work ethic, which you obviously had, and we'll talk about a little bit. But a lot of running is how much pain are you willing to submit yourself to, right?
It really is, yeah. And it's mental. It's a lot of sports are mental. I think running is one of the more mental sports because it's only you and it's not a team. You know, there's points and stuff at meets, which is kind of arbitrary in the grand scheme of things. You're really out there to do your best, and it's only you, and you can only blame yourself. So it's all in your head, especially in cross country when you're a mile away from everybody and you're in the woods and you're hurting. You know, you just got to find things to keep you moving. Yeah. So yeah, it's honestly what's made me successful as an adult is I can push through most things. You know, and I've always hurt every time I'm in pain in a short term circumstance. I've always been in more pain at some point in my life. You know, so yeah, it's paid dividends in my life so far.
That's why runners love those Prefontaine quotes. Man, those runners are all about Prefontaine.
I don't know this.
The Oregon guy, he's just the top of, you got to kill yourself to win.
Okay. The David Goggins of running sort of there.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, that is very good. Yeah, for sure.
No excuses.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned Marshall Windsor. Talk about running for Marshall Windsor and Shelton Mayo and how they helped you along.
Oh, wow. I don't even know where to begin there. I mean, most of my success, honestly, is attributed to both of them. Windsor was just at a time where there was no science and no, no computers. I mean, I used to have index cards. He would write down on the race what my splits were. Every lap, he'd write down to the decimal of a second. He would have 67.5, 67.4. This is what, this is how you looked. He would have a whole write-up for me after every race. And, I mean, looking back on that, at the time, Windsor had this reputation of just kind of being a hard-nosed coach that, pushed you to be your best. And I thought that just came along with it, But when I look back on him, man, he really cared.
The investment, yeah.
Windsor is the reason why this particular area of the county is successful in running. I think it starts with him, which is crazy because I think when he moved here, so he ran for Virginia Tech back before it was called Virginia Tech, and then he moved here. I don't know what brought him to this area, but I remember
his son was going to state.
Yeah, that would have been it. And I remember him telling me years ago that he wanted to coach at Croatan.
He did.
He interviewed there. They either didn't want him or it didn't work out.
They didn't have a spot, I think.
Didn't have a spot, and he ended up
weren't too interested. Yeah.
And I'm thinking now, how different could that have been?
Yeah.
Right? And so
having
him as a coach. And that's the other weird thing too. I almost went to Croatan High because where I live was kind of on the border of the.
You could have just made a choice there.
Yeah, I could have went.
Oh wow!
They didn't have a school bus, and my parents weren't going to drive me to school, so I ended up going to West, literally because there was a school bus that dropped off in front of my house.
How about that?
So it kind of, as fate would have it, he ended up being my coach.
Wow.
And, yeah, Windsor was just very invested. Took me home when I didn't have a ride. Name it, he did it. And he really helped me be successful. And mentally, he was really good too. He was big on. Stick your nose in, get in a good race, get around good competition, and then, just go for it. And don't always run safe. Just get after it and believe in yourself. And, yeah, he is the reason why I was successful, I think, primarily.
Yeah, Marshall Windsor just celebrated his 55th year coaching.
He's been doing this for a little while.
Yeah.
I mean, I bet when you were there, you were probably like, boy, I wonder if he's close to retirement age. He's still doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he came, and like John said, he retired. He was done 30-something years in the D.C. area. It was Lake Braddock High School in Burke, Virginia.
Yeah.
They had 17 state championships while he was there, 11 state runner-up finishes.
I'm telling you, yep.
At one point, the girls' teams in cross-country, indoor, and outdoor won 13 straight titles.
Yeah.
He was named the USA Track and Field National Track Coach of the Year. Like John said, he knew his stuff before because he was a Virginia Tech runner, ACC.
And I'm so curious. Obviously, you didn't start running when you came into high school. Mm-mm. So did you know the reputation of a person like a Marshall Windsor at that time?
No. And even if I did, I wouldn't have understood it.
Sure, but I mean, how bonkers to kind of not stumble in, but certainly to be blessed with the opportunity to cultivate that talent under a coach like that.
Yeah, I mean, I had a professional caliber coach in front of me and had no clue. I had absolutely no clue.
And he had coached Alan Johnson in Virginia, who was a gold medalist, hurdler.
Crazy.
Right?
Mia Hamm too, the American soccer player. She was a track athlete.
And Hubert Davis went to school there, I think.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
you're well researched.
I did the 50th year of Windsor coaching, and that was 5 years ago.
It still sticks in there. Yeah.
So he just keeps on coaching. I thought this would be like his fine farewell, this big bon voyage.
No,
he's been doing it. No, he's 55. He's still trucking.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, he says there's only so much fishing and golfing you can do. He says, I got to do something.
Yeah, but he coached an Olympic gold medalist.
Yeah.
And that was my coach. How lucky.
Right.
It's unbelievable. It's almost like God kind of put us in that spot at that time.
Wow. And it's funny you talk about him being so, soft, looking out and such soft heart and helping you and stuff. But that's not the reputation of Windsor, right?
You have to earn it. You have to earn the respect and once he knows you're committed and you're going to do what it takes, he's a lot easier on you and he kind of works with you. But a big part of a high school runner's journey is understanding that you have to be bought in, you have to go through the pain, and not everybody's willing to do that, but they want to be a runner. And he kind of helps you bridge that gap and might kick you out the door kind of on the way doing that.
And just the investment he has in all these kids, like you said. And I remember the story. I think it was Shelton maybe said that it's not just John Crossley and Blake Dodge, but the kid who finishes last. He's got a note card for them at the end of the day.
Every kid.
Here's what you need to do.
Yeah, and it's real too. Like the recommendations. Maybe we'll cover this later, but I ran in college. I did not have that experience. My coach, he couldn't have cared less about the athletes. And,
what a contrast.
Oh, yeah, and hopefully I don't get in hot water here. I don't know if he listens to this, but yeah, it was not
hey.
That was a wake-up call, huh?
Totally different. I was just talking to you about it. Like, that was a big difference. I wasn't very successful in college, and there's a lot of reasons for that.
Sure.
But generally, like, having a coach like Windsor is very, very rare. Even for a professional athlete to have that is really rare. And I think if I would have stuck with him, I could have been a professional runner.
How about that?
Yeah, I think very likely, actually. I mean, I had a chance to go to the Olympic trials 2013, 2014. Should have got rid of my coach and went back to Windsor, and I think it would have happened.
How about that?
You can't live in the past, I guess. But no, Marshall Windsor for sure.
How about that?
Number one reason for all the success. And Shelton Mayo wasn't far behind that. Mayo, I draw a contrast there because Shelton I only worked with in the fall for cross country. He wasn't as involved on the track side, which makes sense looking back. But in cross country, he had a lot of expertise there. He ran collegiately at UNC Pembroke. Hopefully I'm correct in saying that. He supported me a lot from like a professional or like a personal development standpoint. He was my history or civics teacher, I would say.
Yeah.
And, he had a reputation for being very hard academically, and so I took his class thinking, okay, what's this going to be like? And it challenged me. But it made college a lot easier. He kind of runs his class like a college class, and he was just very involved. Like he would take me home sometimes when I didn't have a ride. Like I just didn't have a ton of resources coming up, and he kind of bridged those gaps. And he would always ask me how I'm doing at home and what that life's like. Do I need anything? And that support went a really long way for me. And he's just always been a huge fan, in a weird way. Even when he was my coach, like I'd be in a whole crowd coming down a straightaway, in a very fast race where I'm dead tired, and I hear him over everyone else. And it's weird too. He had personal struggles back then, and I knew nothing about them. With the blindness and stuff. I'm sure he's covered that with you guys at some point, but I didn't know that existed. Maybe I was just an oblivious kid and didn't know. But looking back at that, I'm like, man, he was that involved and that dedicated and pushed me that hard, and he had his own struggles in life that he wasn't even talking about. And that it really is humbling. Coaching is not for a lot of people, but those two guys have it right, and that's why this area is breeding runners the way it is.
Yeah, Wes has just had an unbelievable run for about 20 years now, and Shelton Mayo, former guest, you can check out that episode of the Paper Boys podcast.
True.
Also, one of our most faithful listeners. Also represents us with his Paper Boys T-shirt.
That's right.
You see him out in the wild.
Winner of last year's amateur fan pick and panel for the football.
News Times football. He can also pick football games very well.
That's right. He's a man of many talents. That's right.
He's a Lions fan, so it's been
rough
for a long time.
Between being an NC State fan and a Lions fan.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, he's a loyal guy.
He's been good these past few years.
Yeah,
he's
man.
Probably been happy about it.
So like I said, John's got a couple of state titles coming into the last month of his senior year. The senior year is already going really well. He's the state runner-up, which has never been done before. He wins a state title in the winter. I think it was 1,000 in the winter of his senior year.
Yeah.
So that was your second one. You'd won the junior year, the 800, right, outdoors. So there's your two. Again, he doubles his state championships in the spring. He breaks Sonny Hyman's 1,000-year-old record of a mile. He's already got the middle school record. And then he goes to this champions tune-up. And we're like, oh, John Crossley, he's a good high school runner. He's a good county runner. He's won a couple of state champions. And he runs the 800. And this is what he does there. He runs the second fastest 800 meters by a high school boy in the United States that year, and the fourth fastest time in the history of North Carolina. Mm-hmm. Was that? Did you know that was a possibility?
No, I could tell you about that race too.
Yeah,
so that was
1:49.99, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, and the goal was to break 50 because I needed the seed time to get into the national meet. So I knew going in I had to break 50, but I wasn't really focused on that. It was more so. So there was a sprinter at the time named Trentavious Friday who still holds the record in the 100 meters, state record, in North Carolina. I think, as far as I know. Okay. Last I checked, he still had the record. Okay. So if I'm incorrect there, feel free to blot that out. But he ran 9.99 in high school, and everybody was excited to come to that particular race and watch him race because that's professional level. Like he's not going to go to college; he's going to go sign a Nike deal type of race, right? And so everybody wanted to see that. And it kind of got to me a bit. And I'm like, no, I want people to come see me. I respect him and I want to watch him run too, but sure. I want to put on a show as much as he's going to. And so I came into that race thinking, okay, this is going to be, humbly speaking in my own mind, this is going to be a coming out party. I'm going to give people a reason to watch the 800 like he is giving people a reason to watch the 100. And so I went there fully expecting to run fast. But that race was weird because I went out really hard in the first lap and it just happened to feel easy. You know, as a runner, those that run, they kind of understand this when they hear this, but you have certain races where you go out really fast and aggressive and it feels way better than you expect it to. You feel really fresh and like you could do it all over again, and it's rare, but when it happens, it's like, wow, this is that once in a lifetime, I really need to push it. And so that's what I did, and was able to get under 150. And then the media response and the crowd response after that was overwhelming. You know, it rivaled what he did when he stepped on the track and ran. And so it was like, okay, mission accomplished. And then I had the seed time to get into national level meets, so that was another box checked. And I was really happy after that. But at that point, I knew that I could run really fast. And I remember seeing it was like a nationally ranked time at the time. I think it, like you said, second or third in the nation at that moment.
Fourth in North Carolina history, and you were second by a high school boy that year in the state, in the country.
In the country,
yeah.
And so I knew at that point, like, okay, maybe I can go to nationals and win the thing, you know.
Sure.
So there was another guy I was worried about, which I'll cover later, I guess, if you bring it up. But there was a guy that I was supposed to race at nationals too that ended up not being there. But,
okay.
But yeah, that race was about Trentavious Friday and me just trying to put the 800 on the map because I felt like everybody wanted to go watch him.
And where was the Champions Tune-Up at?
Oh, you know, it was it was kind of in the middle of nowhere, if I remember right. I want to say it was near, oh man, I really don't know.
Okay.
But it wasn't around here though. We traveled to it.
But the national championship was Greensboro, right?
It was.
A&T?
A&T, North Carolina A&T.
And so you go in that with pretty confident. You got the second best time in the country that year. You're thinking, I'm going to compete for a national title here.
Yeah, well, Windsor, in true Windsor fashion, he said, hey, that's fast, but it's not going to win it. Like, you're going to need to run a lot faster than that. But you can, and we're going to train really hard. And so from that race, the whole beginning part of the summer, because the national event happens in June. It was actually on Father's Day of 2013, I think. Yeah, I think that's right. You have to fact check me there. But
okay.
It happens later in the summer, so you've already technically graduated.
Right.
And so I'm at the track every day, 6 o'clock in the morning with Windsor, just hammering it. And I got confidence more so after that because once Windsor saw me run that time, he started giving me, workouts that would really, like, for example, like if I had to run a fast 600 at practice, what he would do is he would take our sprinters, the 200-meter guys, he'd put 3 of them in a row, and they would run a relay against me running a 600. And I would have to beat them. That's how I would train. And so we really dropped the hammer hard training. 2-a-days. I'd get up at 4 or 5 in the morning in the summer and run my mileage. In the afternoon, I'd be on the track just hammering it with Windsor and the sprint guys, trying to get that speed to be ready for anything at nationals, because it is a whole different level when you start running nationally.
Well, then you get out there and you're with these runners who are big egos, and they want to go out there and they want to set the pace right away, and they jump out on you.
They do.
You kind of fall behind on that first lap.
Oh yeah, big time.
It was a little bit of and I think that was a position that Windsor said, please don't put yourself in that position. But you wanted to run smart. You watched them sprint out,
and you said you were that kind of runner anyway, right?
Yeah, I wasn't planning on doing that race though. I was trying to obey in that one. I was going to go out with the leaders, but there was a guy. What was his name? He ended up running at LSU, so he was SEC, and he was the real deal, and he went out really hard. I cannot remember his name. The race is still on YouTube if you watch it.
Yeah, I remember watching it.
Blair Henderson was his name.
Yeah.
Okay.
He went out in like 22 point, which is like that'd be like running a 44-second 400 if you held it. So that's smoking fast for an 800. And I was thinking like, no, I don't think I'm gonna do that. And I just saw him getting away from it, and then the first lap I was slow going out. I was at 54.9 or something like that, which in elite 800-meter running, that's very slow, because normally you run about a 2-second differential first to second lap. So if you go out in 50 point, you're going to come back in 52, and that's if you're in really, really good shape and you don't die worse than that. So I'm thinking, well, I'm going out in 55. If I run 57, I'm going to get laughed off of this track. Like, I'm not going to do anything, And so we started catching up to Blair a little bit, and I was like, okay, well, now's the time to go. I feel fresh. I'm just going to go. And I passed 2 or 3 runners, and I was on the back stretch. I saw the turn that I told you about earlier where everybody kicks, so I knew they were going to do that. And I didn't know what kind of speed they had, so I just went for it. I said, it's now or never. All that training I did, I'm just going to leave it right here, and if I get caught, I get caught. And I happened to make it there. So that's,
you ended up, I think you started kicking around 350 meters, and you got ahead of the pack at 200 meters to go. So, you still had to close out the race, but what did it feel like to take that position in that moment?
it was kind of surreal.
Sure.
Once I got to the curve, I was confident because
Yeah.
I knew I could sprint 200 meters. You know, I've run like 20.5, 20.7 in the 200, so I have 200 meter speed to run an open 200. So I knew I could run with them, but I was tired, so I thought they were going to catch me. But when you're a runner, you get a confidence at 200 meters. You know you're kind of at the end of the race, and there's not a whole lot that can go wrong in the last 200 meters. It's just all out. Like, you don't have to think. So you just turn your mind off and you go. There were two brothers from not Lake Charles, from somewhere in New Jersey, the Clark brothers.
Mays Landing.
Yeah, and they were known for having a very aggressive kick late in races, and so I was expecting them to be behind me, and they were, but they ran out of time, luckily. So, yeah, that's kind of how that race went. It wasn't the plan to run that way, though.
When it's wild to think earlier that spring, you're just hoping to clear 150,
right?
And now you're at 148.01.
Yeah,
unreal.
And what's the 149.99 at the Champions to the 148.01? How much time is in between those?
Not long, maybe a month.
I was going to say it wasn't. It was because it was both like right there in June, right?
Yeah. The difference being in the tune-up, I had no competition. It was kind of my own rabbit. Nobody was in the race with me that kept. I mean, I had the lead from start to finish. You know, there were some other guys in there. Vincent Crisp, I think, was in that race, which he ended up being a pretty successful runner. I think he's a professional runner now, but I think he was in that race, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong about that, but at the time, nobody went with me. I was kind of on my own. But at nationals, no matter who you are, there's going to be somebody running with you. So, yeah, that's a big part too. Is I think if the runners in this area, like if it's hard to explain. If the competition in this local area was stiffer, our school would be even better. You know?
That's a big part of it. Being in Eastern North Carolina, almost in any sport, it's tough to compete with. You know, we tennis players, golfers. As soon as they go to the middle part of the state, it's a different environment.
Yeah. I mean, even at Taco Bell, there was a runner there named Kennard. Something Kennard. I can't remember his first name, but he ended up running for Indiana University. He was successful in college too, but he had a huge reputation all up and down the East Coast. He was traveling with his coach and running those fast times, and so everybody knew who he was. And I mean, people even told me, if you beat him, you can run. Like, you can run with those guys. And so I had competition in South Carolina, and I ran fast. Because,
the mile, okay.
I mean, sometimes some of those things can tell you what you're capable of.
I had to race him in the 800 after running the mile. The mile I had competition too from a couple of kids that went to NC State. But yeah, when I won that, and then I had to go back and race this guy that had this fearsome reputation. I distinctly remember that race because I had just finished the mile and run faster than I ever had. And I was pretty much dead. Windsor was shoving Cliff Bars down my throat and pouring water on me to get me ready. And then I see the 800 guy I have to race get off his bus right where I'm warming up, and he looks totally fresh. And I'm like, wonderful. Windsor just told me to look the other way, and he walked me away from there. And
look the other way.
Stop
Don't look at him.
He's like, don't worry about it. It's not going to matter. I'm like, all right. I trust you. I ended up winning that. But
wow.
Yeah, I feel really lucky, to be honest. Like, I have good instincts as a runner and as a competitor, and I want to win, but I mean, nobody could have planned that, you know. Like, I think I was in God's hands. God knew I had the ambition and the drive to make something of myself, and I think that happened to be the vehicle, honestly.
So you run the 148.01. That was the fastest, made you the fastest high school boys 800-meter runner in state history. Mm-hmm. You also set a meet record, and you were 8th nationally at that time. So that was pretty good to be 8th all time.
Yeah, it was, and there was some respectful names on that list I had known about. So that was honestly a huge accomplishment. I was really happy about that. I mean, again, I didn't do it for that.
Right.
And my coach, my future East Carolina coach, was in attendance at that meet, so it was nice to do that in front of him. I got my first scholarship offer from East Carolina. I mean, I had others prior to that, but the first offer I was not a huge. I didn't jump at it because it wasn't a full scholarship or anything like that. They weren't throwing that at me initially, and so it was kind of, I would have to incur some debt to go to school there, and so I was still kind of on the fence on what I was going to do. And after I ran that race, on the spot, they're like, okay, we're going to give you a full ride.
And those are rare in that sport.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, you know, at that time too, it was weird because I go back to my tent, and the University of Oregon is next to the tent. NC State's there, all these big running giants, and Raleigh Geiger, the coach at NC State for a long time that I respected a lot, was there, and I got to talk to him a little bit. And I mean, ultimately, I think I'm going to be on a hot mic, I guess. I think I made the wrong decision to run for that school.
Yeah.
I made the right decision to go there because I met my wife, and
there you go.
We have a beautiful life now. But as a runner, I think made the wrong decision, not from the university standpoint because I loved going to school there, but athletically that was not the same structure that I had in high school. And I think maybe a bigger school like NC State or maybe Oregon or maybe one of those schools would have been a better environment, you know. But I mean, ultimately that's not their fault. I should have rose above it, but that's really what happened.
Well, I recall at the time when you started to blow up on this national level, and you go from ECU, you're going to ECU, to people will be like, well, John, Oregon's come calling, and SEC and Pac-12, all this stuff, but you were, I remember you were all about, well, I've made a commitment, so I need to stick with that. Yeah. But you also wanted to stay pretty close to home because you were pretty close with your family, right?
Yeah, my family had a hard time letting go, and I felt guilty about that a bit. I have a younger brother that looked up to me a lot growing up. And that was the other thing too. Different levels of colleges was foreign to me. I hope that doesn't sound elitist, but there are different levels of institutions at the collegiate level, athletically and academically.
Were you not a sports fan? You didn't really know the differences?
I followed professional sports. I didn't follow collegiate sports that much. And so
you figure they're all pretty much the same.
Yeah. I followed the mantra, and you probably can find this quote somewhere in a paper that you wrote, is that the best will race the best. Like if I'm in the collegiate Division I level, I will race them eventually if they're at these bigger schools.
Sure.
And I eventually did, honestly. Yeah. But yeah, I think from a system standpoint, I could have made a better decision there. But it is what it is.
Well, at that point, you were 8th all time. The only people ahead of you that people had run sub 148s. Mm-hmm. So you were in select company.
Alan Webb and Michael Granville out of California, those guys. Yeah. So I wish I grew up in those times. It would have been fun to race those guys.
Yeah. Yeah. So it doesn't stop there. It just keeps going. John wins the Gatorade, track and field athlete of the year. Again, stuff that had never been done before. Only one other person that has done that before, and it's just him and John, is Lonnie Chisenhall, who recent guest of the Paperboys podcast.
Hey, how about that?
The two Gatorade players of the year. We just recently had one. So what did that mean to you to get that?
That was wild. I mean, honestly, to this day, it's probably the most proud I am of all of the awards.
Even over the national championship.
Yeah, it's the national championship. I went out and I ran a race and I won it. The Gatorade doesn't come that easy. It's not as easy as winning a race. They follow your whole career from freshman to senior year, and your character and what you've been involved in. It's not just about the running. They follow your academics, and I always cared a lot about my grades and just doing well academically, because again, I thought that was going to be another ticket to go to school. So yeah, that was I didn't even know that was an award that people got until I found out about it. And I can't remember. It might have been Shelton Mayo that told me that Gatorade had reached out. And
he had nominated you.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Yeah.
You said Gatorade, like Gatorade.
Right.
Gatorade.
Right. And then I got on the internet and I started seeing all these professional athletes that were former Gatorade Players of the Year. And I was like, wow, this is a huge deal,
Yeah.
The
Gatorade, a lot of names we know, right?
Right, yeah. And the Gatorade people want to come and do this thing, and I get this trophy. To me, that was the epitome. I was really proud of that. And then also, too, and I told my wife this the other day, too. It's kind of weird how these are coming up, but I ran with a lot of local pride when I was competing. I was very proud to be a Patriot and to represent this area. And in a lot of ways, I ran with Eastern North Carolina on my shoulders in a lot of ways. And so when I got that recognition from Gatorade, I felt like I had kind of given back in a way and kind of put our school on the map. And yeah, I was just very proud of that. I could not believe it. I didn't even think that was in the realm of possibility.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that was a totality thing too. It wasn't just athleticism. John had a 3.92 GPA in the classroom, and he had volunteered with Special Olympics and Hope Mission, Community Men's Homeless Shelters, Paul's Pet Adoption. You were pretty
ROTC and National Honor Society.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, you were busy in high school, weren't you?
Yeah, I was doing my best. I just wanted to kind of get involved in everything. And
well, there's that first generation there. You wanted to get in there and do something that hadn't been done before.
Yeah, which is really weird looking back on that, but that's very much my mindset. It's I think you can make something of yourself without going to college. I'll say I've known a lot of people to be successful without it, but at that time, my entire thought of success was pent up in getting a college degree.
And a lot of people.
Right. I'm like, how do I get to that?
Yeah.
And those were the vehicles, and the volunteer work, I wish I need to figure out how to do more of that now as an adult, because I want to give back and be more involved. But yeah, those are the things that you remember the most, and I have a lot of memories about all those things I was involved in. So it was pretty well-rounded toward the end.
What did you think you were going to study when you went to East Carolina?
Medicine. I wanted to be a doctor for a long time. I didn't know what was entailed with that. And I don't even remember why I changed from that. I just don't when I got to college, I don't think it wasn't so much the coursework was challenging. I think I could have done that and been a doctor. I had great grades in college, graduated with honors there, but I ended up shifting to a business degree. And I don't remember what the shift was for that. A lot of kids, they take that first weed out class in pre-med and you're all in gen eds at the beginning anyway, so I didn't even get that far. But no, I just one day woke up and was like, you know what, I want to study like business people do well. Let's go study business, and that's kind of what I wanted to do. And yeah, it worked out that way. But I initially wanted to kind of do a biology degree and go pre-med.
And how long? And did you Did you graduate from ECU? Did you stick it out?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I graduated early, a semester.
So, that's why I think why I asked. It seemed like you were done really quickly.
Yeah, I graduated in 2016.
Wow.
And then moved out to California. Yeah, because I had met her there, and she lived in Southern California, so I moved out there with no job. Luckily, got a job at a startup selling package lockers, which I don't know if you guys have out here, but basically everybody in California gets their packages stolen off their porches and apartments and stuff. So some company came up with an idea to put a smart locker system at the communities, and the UPS delivers to them, and then you go and get your package. It's all secure and everything. Okay. So I used to sling those for a while, and yeah, I'm just at the office one day, and Google reaches out to me, and so I moved up to Mountain View, and up in Northern California. Worked at Google for a couple of years.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Wild. For a small town kid like me, it was wild. It kind of opened my eyes, tripled my salary, and gave me the chance to marry her, because I was not making good money at first. I knew we wanted to get married, but I was like, okay, well, I have to support a household, and I want to have a healthy financial system going before I propose. And once I got that job, I was like, wow, like God is making this possible. We're gonna go for it. So I proposed, and for some reason she said yes. Kind of went from there. Yeah.
And so then after Google, you said, I don't want Northern California is not where I want to be. So you're in Texas now?
Yeah. California wasn't for either of us, mostly for her. I think I can live anywhere, but she. Southern California folks and NorCal folks don't necessarily...
Not the same deal.
Yeah.
They're not moist simpatico?
No.
Well, there's a big gap geographically, too. I mean,
and culture's different.
Yeah.
It was just so crowded, though. Like, I mean, I would sit on a shuttle. So we had a shuttle system there, which is common in tech. They shuttle employees to and from the office. I think a lot for just time reasons. They want you to keep working. So they put you on a bus that has Wi-Fi and drinks and all this stuff, so you work on your commute. But yeah, I would be on a bus an hour and a half on the freeway every day, each direction. So 3 hours I'm on a bus. And I was only like 20 miles from the office. It wasn't even that far, So yeah, that was getting old. And then the Bay Area is so expensive. We wanted to be homeowners, and we wanted to grow our family, but I didn't really want to do that in an apartment setting. I think you can do that. I know a lot of people have to do that, so I want to be mindful of that. I don't want to sound pretentious, but I had this idea of like a house and a yard, and like the kids are in the backyard playing, and I did not see how that was going to happen in Silicon Valley. So I had a buddy of mine left. He went to Facebook in Austin. That was 6 years ago now, 5 years ago now, and Austin was affordable and clean and safe.
Almost sleepy compared to now, right?
Yeah, it was awesome. And so I interviewed and got a job there, and we moved and started our family.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible. Newport kid. Love to see it.
Unbelievable. Yeah, I couldn't have predicted it.
Yeah. Do you still run?
Kind of. Yeah, kind of. I got into it pretty heavily, 6 or 7 months ago, maybe longer. I'm pretty bad with time. But I had a stress fracture in my foot.
I was going to say, you strain that first, or you get that first injury, you're like, oh, man.
Yeah. So I re-aggravated an injury, and it was bugging me, and so I backed off a bit. And then I went and got an MRI recently, and they told me my foot looks great. So I don't know what's going on. It's not broken. I broke my foot in college competing, so I thought it was that. But I'm kind of slowly getting back into it. I struggle with it, though, because I'm not a casual runner, and so that's...
You're all or nothing, huh?
Yeah, I'm like 50 pounds heavier than I was back then.
Oh, wow.
But I hit the ground like I'm ready to run 50, 60, 70 miles a week, and you can't do that. You'll break down really fast. So.
Well, one of the things that was John's reputation in high school was the mileage. His weekly mileage was not an issue with Marshall Windsor or Mayo. The only issue was keeping him under.
No, it was the opposite. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So I think the phrase was he'll run himself to death.
You're a little maniacal when it comes to hard work, aren't you?
Yeah. Remove the variables that can cause you to fail. It wasn't going to be hard work.
Yeah.
I've always had a good work ethic. My mom gave me that for sure. My dad was a hard worker too, but my mom was just always like, you're going to college. Like, you're going to work hard. You're going to do the right things. Always do the best you can, everything you do. And so that's where that came from. Yeah.
Would you like to do some masters competitions if you could get to that area?
Yeah, I would. I mean, I know I can. It's just a matter of, do I want to be dedicated to it?
Right.
I have a little one on the way, so that's going to put it down.
You don't want to just do it sort of a side thing.
Like you said, you're not
want to throw yourself
guy.
into it. Yeah.
And that's just everything in my life. I don't do anything casual. If I have all these random hobbies. When I laser in on something, I want to do it. I to a fault.
Become the expert.
Yeah, I just dive fully into it. It's kind of unhealthy sometimes, but it's just who I am, I guess.
Well, I have to say, as somebody who covered John, and mostly that final month, I feel like we were talking like once a week there for about 4, 5, 6 weeks in a row. Last night at the Hall of Fame induction, and they were going through everybody's stuff, and they said that John leads the sales teams now.
Yeah, well, I did. That's a whole different story.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a bunch of layoffs, and I was a manager at the.
Okay.
They said META last night at the football game, but it's Meta, which is
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, I got you. I didn't pick up on that.
which is the parent company for Facebook.
Sure.
Which everybody
Yeah,
knows.
of course.
Right. And I used to lead a sales team there.
Okay.
And we went through these massive layoffs. Like Zuckerberg just kind of figured we had too many people doing the same thing.
I got you.
Laid off like 10,000 or 12,000 people, and I didn't get laid off, but I stepped back down to being a seller. So I don't lead any teams these days. I'm selling like everybody else and enjoying it.
Well, I'll say from my reporter side of it, hearing that John Crossley is involved in any kind of way or shape or form in sales, and listening to him talk today compared to him. Now, granted, you're talking about a teenager compared to somebody who's
Wasn't a big talker.
John was not loquacious as a teenager. I can tell you that.
No, I was always the quiet guy.
Yeah.
Even now, that's kind of my default, but I'm working on it.
Oh man, you were leaps and bounds from what you were in high school.
Yeah. I remember the first time you interviewed me, I didn't know what to think. I was super scared. And
you were.
What do I say? Like, yeah, I do remember that. Mm-hmm.
Which again, high school kids. Blake Dodge was kind of the same way. I first couple of times interviewed her, she was scared to death, and by the end, she was. Of course, that was 4 years of interviewing her.
Get used to it.
Yeah, but now John's just like reeling off. Wow. Well, what a career, and the only regrets you have maybe is a little bit is college, and maybe you think you could have done more, but again, life worked out for you anyway.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind I could have been an Olympic runner.
Wow.
But at the end of the day, I realized that's not what it's about. I ran and I achieved the goals I want to, and now I have a different race with my family and growing it and providing a future for my children that was better than what I grew up with. So I'm still running. It's just a totally different arena now.
Sure.
So I don't regret anything. And even the coaches at East Carolina, I had what it took to overcome that, but I ultimately chose not to. I realized my heart was no longer in that direction, which is why I stopped running. And Windsor told me when I was a sophomore, the second you stop loving this, you should stop doing it because it's just not fair to the sport. And I mean, I wasn't running fast times. When I'm not into something, I'm not good at it at all. That's part of the reason why I am the way I am. But I was just throwing up some really poor times toward the end of college, and really I just wasn't caring about it as much, So I was like, okay, I'm going to really invest in my academics. And so I did very well academically at East Carolina and was able to graduate early and kind of start my professional life. So, no, I really don't have a single regret about any of it looking back. I'm thankful and grateful I had the right people in my life when I was young, and there's a lot of kids like me that don't have that, and they never realize what I was able to realize, to move into. It's kind of a lot of glory to God. I wasn't very super religious back then, but I've become so as an adult, and I realize now there's no way in heck that God wasn't looking over my life during that time period for a little, some nobody from the sticks at Newport on a national level like that.
Yeah.
That just doesn't happen accidentally. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, John, it was such a pleasure covering you all those years, and congratulations on the Hall of Fame. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a good time.